Zoom recording. Okay, here we go. All right, guys and gals, happy to have you on tonight. I really appreciate you coming on. I know things are getting busier this time of year, so the fact that you're willing to spend some time with me talking about real estate is pretty amazing because it's one of my favorite topics. I love it, and I love sharing, and I love teaching with you guys. And hopefully, with some of the things you'll learn here, you'll be able to make 2021 a lot better, at least financially. So, so those of you probably saw in November, I was posting quite a bit about owner financing. It's one of my favorite strategies as a both buying houses, but also getting rid of houses or exit strategies. And so I shared some posts about it, but I wanted to kind of have a webinar to sum it all up and get your guys' question answered and things like that. So, and this is something that you can do in Canada and the US. I'll tell you a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know in a minute, but my main focus is on the US, but you can definitely owner finance in Canada as well if you're investing north of the border. So that said, just a quick question. Can you guys see this little tile thing I'm moving around, or does that not show up, like of all the faces? Okay. I just didn't know when I shared my screen if you saw that as well, if I had to move it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so again, for those of you that don't know me, most of you on the call do, but some of you watching the replay might not. So my name is Cal Ewing, and my company is called 49th Parallel Properties. And I've been investing in real estate since 2009 when I bought my first property while I was in university here in Calgary, Canada. Got my first deal done in Las Vegas right around when the bubble burst and the foreclosures went mad crazy, and ended up buying a couple deals back then. Just got my feet wet, and I was hooked at that point on real estate. And I actually grew up on a cattle ranch here in Alberta, Canada, and didn't really fit in as a cowboy at all. Wanted to be in a rock band, so I moved to Calgary and tried to live that dream for a while, and that didn't necessarily work out. So I decided I better, figure myself out financially, because I was a pretty poor musician trying to just get by playing gigs and that kind of thing. And so that's why I found real estate, and I've been hooked ever since. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's kind of how I got my start. I did get a degree in geology, but the whole time all I wanted was to get out of that field and just be a full-time real estate investor. And after working a few oil rigs as a geologist up in northern Canada and in the Arctic, looking for uranium and things like that, I decided that even though geology paid really well, I was never going to be around my family, and I was breathing in like toxic fumes and stuff from the rig mud, and I was just like, this is not worth the money. And so I got out of that as fast as I could and into real estate full time. And so mainly I've been investing in Texas, done lots of wholesale deals, some rehabs, I've got a couple rentals, I've done some private lending and owner financing. Okay, so I'm closing in on about 50 deals all in the US, and I do most of it from here in Canada. All right, so that's me. Get that out of the way. Just a disclaimer, I'm not going to read it all, but some of the strategies I'm sharing, I'm not a real estate attorney or any kind of asset protection attorney or accountant. So these are just things that have worked for me and strategies that I have taken advantage of, and it worked well for me, but you may not get the same results. So don't hold me accountable, because I'm just sharing what I've done and what works for me. So now that's done. So the question is, why, if you go to any major city and you look at all the skyscrapers downtown, why are there mainly bank logos on all the tops of the skyscrapers? And obviously, there's got to be something to this banking thing, because that's where all the money is, right? Banks are some of the wealthiest organizations in the world, and they're not the ones that are buying and holding real estate necessarily. They're the ones that are lending, right? They're lending on real estate, and they're making huge fortunes, well, lending on all kinds of things, but they're making huge fortunes, right? And so there's something to that, otherwise they'd be buying up all the property. And so we're going to talk about how we can make a lot of money being the bank by owner financing. So what I'm going to cover in about an hour-ish is, first of all, what is owner financing and why would you want to do it? How we can sell houses with owner financing and some of the benefits to that. And then also, if we were to have a goal of doing owner finance deals, how do we acquire properties and make offers on houses with that model in mind? Okay, and then also what benefits owner financing has over being a landlord. And some of you guys that are big on landlording and rental properties, you may argue against me on some of this, but I actually like it better. And so I'll show you some of the reasons why. And then also that this is a very what I call recession-proof strategy that works even in a down market when things are looking bad in the real estate market, which we may end up in the next year or two. This is a really good strategy for those downtimes. Okay, so I'll discuss that a little bit. And feel free, you guys, if you have any questions, like we've got a pretty small group. So if you want to just chime in if you have a question, we'll try that for now. And if we get really bogged down, I may speed it up, but feel free to ask questions and I don't mind answering them as we go. So for those of you, most of you probably understand what owner financing is, but if you don't, it goes by quite a few different names, which always makes it more complicated. But seller financing, vendor take back, VTB, seller carryback, all of these things really mean that a property owner is selling their property and they're willing to basically provide kind of like a loan, right? They're allowing you to make the purchase in installments, and most times they charge interest, right? So they're kind of acting as a lender, even though they're selling the property and they were the owner of the property, okay? And so if you own the property, instead of having the title interest in it and being the owner, you can become a bank and have your interest secured to the property just like any bank would, okay? And with this, there's three main profit centers when you own or finance a property. And owner financing itself as a type of transaction is very common. So common, in fact, that at least in Texas, there's an addendum on the standard real estate contract that all the realtors use just for owner financing. So it's common enough that all the real estate boards have a special document just for these types of deals. Okay, so it's not some kind of like out there strategy or something like that. It's very common. And before we get too deep, I just want to clarify the difference between deeds and mortgages and notes, because all these things are kind of related, but they're actually separate things. And first of all, a deed, if you have a deed, it's basically saying the ownership. It dictates the owner of a property, okay? It conveys the title or the ownership of a particular piece of property, okay? And there's different types of deeds, but in general, if you own the deed of the property or if your name's on the deed, then you're the legal owner of this property, okay? But that's different than a mortgage, okay? They're two separate things. Sometimes people think it's all one document. When you go to buy a house and you get a mortgage to buy it, they think it's all one thing, but there's a piece of paper that's the deed, and then there's a piece of paper that's the security instrument or the mortgage. And mortgages themselves, and I'm not being super technical, I'm trying to make this kind of layman's terms here, but there's basically two parts to a mortgage. There's a piece of paper called a note or a promissory note. And this is essentially like your promise to pay. And it's like the contract that has all the terms that you're agreeing to as the borrower and the lender, okay? And so that's kind of like your agreement, right? It has the rules to the game. And then there's another piece of paper called, it's called different things in different areas, but it's the mortgage or the deed of trust or the security deed. But it's basically this document that secures the loan to the piece of property, okay? And that document's usually recorded in the county or the public record. So anyone can view it. If anyone's looking at the title of the property, they are going to see that there is a loan secured to this piece of property, okay? So there's actually two different things. The note usually isn't recorded publicly. It's just more of a mortgage is what borrowed money. Any questions on that? Okay. Uh-oh, I'm getting the I don't. So here's just an example of a promise or you know, who are the parties involved, the amount that's owed, the interest rate, the loan term, all the lender and the borrower agree to. Okay. And then here again is your security instrument or deed of trust. And this is what's registered county, okay, or in the public record. And a lot based on whoever. So I've heard people too long, and they'll record them both and get money for both like that. But basically what happens is whoever can reverse, and this is most jurisdictions, some states and provinces and things might be different, but whoever records their property has priority or over anyone else that records other loans after that. So you may have seen where you have like a first mortgage and then you can get a second mortgage, and like that could be at the same day when you buy your house, or it could be 5 years down the road you might get a property. But whoever's in first position gets paid off first, and then if there's any money left, then whoever's behind gets paid off based on that seniority. Okay. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is later on we're going to talk about using like a private lender to that property. So we're this up front now. The main thing is if you're a lender, you have a lot of control on the property as long as your loan is secured to that property, and no one can sell that house out from under you because you have security and title interest in that property. So we're going to talk about owner financing more as an exit strategy, okay? Not as a way to buy homes, although you can as well use owner financing. If you negotiate with a seller, maybe they will owner finance for you, okay? And then you won't have to get a bank mortgage or use as much of your own cash. But we're going to talk about using this as a way to make money once we own a property. Okay, so there's really 5 components to an owner financed loan or deal. Okay, and really any loan. There's your sale price. So if you own a property and you're selling it with owner financing, you're going to have a sale price that your buyer is going to agree to, right? But then they're not going to pay you all that money up front, right, at one time. So they're going to give you some sort of down payment typically, and you're going to both have to agree on how much the down payment is. And then the remaining balance would be your loan amount, okay? And then with that, you're going to negotiate the payments, right? So what's your interest rate, okay? What's the interest rate? What's the monthly payment going to be? And then is it amortized over a certain period of time, like a normal like bank mortgage would be? Or is it maybe an interest-only loan where none of the principal gets paid off? The borrower is just paying interest until at some point in the future they pay off the amount borrowed. So there's different ways to structure your payment and your interest rate and that kind of thing. And then there's also different loan term lengths. So it could be as long as a 30-year loan. It might be just like a 5-year loan. There's all sorts of different term lengths that you can negotiate as well. So those are all the components of a mortgage really, but also of owner financing. And you can craft and move some of these variables around as you're negotiating in order to make it a win-win for your buyer, who's also your borrower, and yourself. So up to this point, does anyone have any questions on any of that, or is it kind of already understand most of that, or where are you guys at? Everyone's good?
I got a question. When there is the first position for the mortgage, is the lien automatically registered in that for that property? That's an automatic.
Well, if there's no mortgages on the property, and then the lender goes and registers it, or the title company or the attorney that's closing the transaction, they'll go and register it. And if there's no other liens at all, then it will just take first lien position. And there is a way for a lender to, basically they can subordinate their loan. I've seen that happen where there'll be a mortgage on the property and then some new lender comes on board. And this is often if it's like a private loan. So say like I have a private lender and they put down 20,000 and then I want to get a bank mortgage, and the bank says, well, no, we're not going to do this mortgage unless we get first lien position. you can actually negotiate with that original private lender to take a subordination, which means that they're going to move behind the new bank first mortgage. So they can be negotiated. The lender can subordinate their mortgage and take a different spot, but it's all up for negotiation. But typically it's based on the date that it's recorded who gets seniority. Okay.
Okay. And if you don't pay a medical bill or like you
Right.
have a mechanic work on your car because somebody was talking about a mechanic's lien.
Mechanics lien.
Yeah, so those liens take like second or third position, or it just depends on when the date goes in.
Typically, mechanics liens don't even have to be car stuff. It could be like a roofer or a plumber that's not paid. They just call it a mechanics lien. But yeah, typically those kind of liens, it's based on when they're recorded as far as who gets paid first. Yeah, it's based on seniority. Some loans, or sorry, some liens, in some situations like IRS liens and things like that can take more of a seniority in certain cases, or tax liens in a foreclosure situation. But in general, just to keep things simple, it's mainly based on the recording date. Okay.
So the IRS, even if they come in last, if you don't pay taxes, they can actually take first position over the mortgage company?
Not necessarily. From what I've gathered, my attorney that I've talked to, he actually did a course on it once, and I watched it, and it sounds like even that the main first mortgage would still have priority over an IRS lien.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's our model, at least the way I like to do it. So we buy a house. We want to buy it at a discount, obviously, as investors, right? Create some equity from day one. We turn around, and once we own it, we're going to actually turn around and resell it. And we may fix it up or clean it up or even fully remodel it first. But eventually, we're going to sell it, and we're going to owner finance it, okay? And we're going to sell it to somebody who can't qualify for a standard mortgage, like a bank mortgage. They can't go to the bank and get a mortgage to buy a house, okay? And the idea with this is to make this really desirable to someone in this neighborhood who wants to live there. And so our goal, when we can, is to actually set this transaction up so that our buyer's payment, when they have this financing, is going to be the same as what it would cost them to rent in that same neighborhood or a similar house in that neighborhood. And the idea of this is, if you can own a property for the same cost, same monthly cost of rent, like who wouldn't do this, right? So it makes it really easy to sell these types of properties when you can structure it this way, okay? And I saw a statistic a few years back, I don't know if this is still true, but 80% of the population, at least in America, can't qualify for a mortgage. So there's a huge population of people that could be your potential buyer, as long as they have certain criteria that they meet, okay? So we'll talk about our buyers a little bit more here. So like I said, they typically can't qualify to get a bank mortgage, at least right now. Most of the people that we want to look for and do business with are good people that had some financial issues in the past for whatever reason. Maybe their credit took a nasty hit or something. But we want people whose problems are behind them now, and they're just kind of in a recovery phase, but they still can't qualify for a mortgage, okay? There's definitely people out there that are just awful with money. It's just who they are. And, you know, they always have poor credit, and they're always getting in trouble and getting foreclosed on and things. We want to try to avoid those money problem people. And we want to try to find the people that just had some bad luck, right? Like maybe they had some medical problems, huge medical bills. And so they took a bad credit hit, but those problems are behind them. Or I had one lady, she had her home flood in Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and her home wasn't even in a flood zone. So she didn't have flood insurance, but they actually released a reservoir to prevent the whole city from flooding. And as a result of that, it flooded her neighborhood, which never had flooded in the history of that whole area. It took a major flood because of that. And so her home was destroyed. And then the contractor she hired ran away with $100,000 of her money. She didn't know better, and she paid them $100,000 up front, and the contractor walked away with her money. So there's an example of a person that did nothing wrong and had nasty credit because the bank took her house. They foreclosed on that flooded home. Okay, so she's a perfect person because it wasn't her fault. She didn't have a bad credit history prior to that. So those are the kind of people I mean. People with no credit history, people that are self-employed, right? A lot of times if people are newly self-employed, the banks won't look at them until they have about 3 years of income. Foreign nationals, right? People that maybe are not citizens in that country, but are living there or maybe working there or whatever. And all of these types of people, if you can imagine the effects that COVID has had financially on so many people right now who've lost their jobs, or working at half capacity or whatever it is, you know, it's a lot of times not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong, but suddenly they don't have a job and their credit is taking a massive hit, or they're getting whatever it is, right? They're going to be foreclosed on or whatever. So I feel like our pool of potential great owner finance buyers is going to jump exponentially in the next year or two. Okay. And this is awesome because we can help these people become homeowners again. And this is what they want, and we want to be able to help them as well. Okay. So the cool thing about this is the value that we sell, like the sale price that we sell a home owner financed, has a little bit less to do with the other comps or comparable sales in the area, right? So normally when you're doing, say, like a fix and flip or something like that, you really got to be careful about what are the other sales. Like, we want to find similar houses that sold in the last, 6 months kind of thing. What did they sell for? Because that's how we determine our sale price. Well, this is a little bit different, and we don't need to rely on that quite as much. We're less concerned about the appraisal value, the tax assessed value, et cetera. Okay. What we're doing here is we're actually creating a product on the marketplace because we're including the financing that other people can't get anywhere else. Okay. And so we're able to actually charge a premium for this. Okay. And so oftentimes we can actually sell our homes for a little bit higher than market as is value. Okay. And the reason for this is we're not competing with the other homes on the street that are for sale, because our buyer that we're marketing to, they can't go and buy those other homes that are for sale down the street, because those other homes require either a cash purchase or a mortgage, right? Financing, and they can't get either. Okay. So those aren't our competitors. And so we're able to actually charge a little bit more if we want, because we're giving an opportunity to these people that they can't get anywhere else. So it's like supply and demand, right? There's low supply, there's demand, and we can charge a little bit more if we want to. And so
quick question.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if the comps in the neighborhood are basically running like 125, 150,
yeah,
and I purchased a home at 150,
yeah,
but I decide to seller finance, and I say that, okay, I'm going to seller finance, but I want to seller finance it at 210. So now the price of that property is now 210, but because I'm carrying a mortgage, if the person wants to come in and purchase it at that price, then because I'm the bank and I'm setting the rates, I'm setting the interest rates, I'm setting the mortgage payments, I'm stacking the tables in my favor. So it's like, okay, if you want it, it's at 210. If you don't, have a nice day.
Essentially, yeah. Yes and no. Like, if it's too high, if it just makes no sense, right? Like, if say you want to buy a car, right? You go to the car dealership, and a lot of people, when they're looking for a car, they don't really care what the sticker price is so much. They just want to know what their monthly payment's going to be. And of course, they're looking at the features of the car as well. But they don't really care what the sales price is, most people. They just want to know the monthly, right? So as long as you can present a deal for them that the monthly is something that they can afford and they're able to own a home when they couldn't otherwise, the answer to your question is, yeah, you can really do whatever you want. In general, so that to have you avoid having your house sit on the market for way too long, though, the general rule, at least in Texas where I invest, is like about 10 to 15% markup. Okay. So say you got your home appraised and it appraises at 200. Well, you could probably sell it for 10 to 15% above that and be totally fine because you're for the same reasons you mentioned, right? But if you're trying to sell it for 300, you may be able to get it done, but your buyers might be like, yeah, no, that's just ridiculous, right? So it has to be within reason.
But when the buyer is like, they've got poor credit, no credit, you know, banks won't lend to them. Every place that their brothers, their cousins, their uncles, they've tried all those other funding sources. They have no other. I mean, they can't even rent a place because they've had bad credit, as you said. The lady got screwed over because of the bad contract. So through no fault of their own, you know, they're in a desperate situation. So if I'm providing them that opportunity to have a nice, decent place to live, and it's within their budget. I mean, it's not quite out of their range. I'm just saying that it's going to take you longer to be able to purchase this, but this will be your home if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they're willing to pay it, then you can sell it for whatever you want.
Okay.
And that is the goal, right? Is to make it affordable so that they can own a home now. You know what I mean? I'm just saying if you mark it up too high, no one may buy your house, right? So you don't want to just like try for such a high sale price and then it just sits on the market is what I'm saying. But in general, you can sell these homes for more because of what you said. So if I'm like, pretend I'm the seller and or the buyer and I really like this neighborhood and I'm on Zillow or the MLS or whatever, realtor.com, and I'm seeing all these homes, but I can't buy any of these because they don't allow owner financing and I don't have the credit, right? So all of these comps that we're seeing for sale right here I can't buy any of them. So it's not competition. But if your home's sitting on whatever Burnwood Lane and it's 220 or 250, whatever, you know what I mean? Well, that's the only one I can buy. And if I really like that neighborhood and I can afford the monthly, then I might just take you up on that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's the one kind of criteria I like to use is the 10 to 15% markup. But if we really want a sure bet to make sure that we can get this house sold and it's, you know, we're not paying holding costs on it and things like that, I also like to do the why rent when you can own thing. Okay. And the idea is this, and I already mentioned it to you, but if it costs the same to own or rent, then why wouldn't you choose to own, right? Why would you rent? So what I like to do when I'm looking at my deals is set it up so that their payments, including taxes and insurance and the mortgage payment, is the same or close enough to rent. So that's going to be a no-brainer for people, right? If you're in a neighborhood and rent is $1,000 and your monthly payment for your potential buyer is like $2,000, well, good luck. They'll probably want to move to a different neighborhood, right? So you need to make it so it's comparable to rent most times. So I'll show you how we do that. And this is what I call the owner finance value, because that might be different than the actual appraisal value of the home. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say this. So first of all, step one, when you're looking at a deal that you're going to owner finance, and notice we're starting from the back end here. We're not talking about purchasing right now. We're talking about, first of all, we got to figure out what can we sell this for and what would the terms of the financing look like. And this is the same with if you're fixing and flipping. You need to know what your sale price is going to be, your ARV after repair value, before you make your offer, right? So this is the same thing. We're looking at the end first, and then we'll figure out how much we can offer to make all the numbers work, okay? So first of all, we need to know, well, what does this house rent for? Okay, and so this is where you can use like rentometer.com. Zillow has a rental, what they call the rental zestimate, which is an estimation of what properties will rent for. But really your best bet is to get your realtor to pull rental comps for you and basically figure out in about a mile radius, what are similar size and configuration homes renting for. So if your home is 2,000 square feet, 3-bed, 2-bath, what are the other similar houses that are rentals? What have they rented for in the last 6 months to a year? Okay. It doesn't have to be spot on, like some things like ARV analysis, but you just need to know pretty roughly, you know, what do these homes rent for? Okay. Because this is our starting point. Then what we need to do is figure out what the monthly property taxes are going to be that our new buyer is going to be paying, right? And the insurance, homeowner's insurance, And if there is a homeowners association fee or a condo board, what are the monthly HOA or condo fees, if that applies? Okay. Because what we want to know is, what is our buyer going to have to pay every month to own this house? And the taxes, you can figure this out from the tax assessor's website, and you can call insurance companies and get quotes. Okay. So just using a really, really simple example, let's just say that the house will rent for $1,000 a month. Taxes are 100 a month and insurance is 100 a month. Okay. So what we do is, if we want our buyer's total all-in monthly payment to be the same as rent, then we need to take that rent, which is $1,000, and we subtract the taxes, which is 100, their insurance that they're going to pay, which is 100. Maybe the HOA, there is no HOA in this area, so they don't have that. So when you subtract those other costs out, the amount that they can spend on a loan payment is $800 a month. Okay. Everyone get that, what I'm doing there? So we want their total all-in principal, interest, taxes, and insurance to equal to about the same as rent. If you're a little bit higher, a little bit lower, doesn't matter, in the ballpark of what the house would rent for. Okay. So in this easy example, they can afford to pay $800 to me as their lender in a loan payment. Okay. So step 3, from now that we have what their monthly payment is going to be, we need to figure, we can actually work backwards using a mortgage calculator to figure out what the loan is going to be, what the loan amount is going to be. Okay. So you can set your own interest rate. I use what's standard in my market in the big cities in Texas, which is usually 8 to 10%. Okay. If you're in Toronto or I don't know, Miami or something, maybe owner financing, maybe they don't go as high as 10, you know, and especially these days, like with interest, like bank interest, like at 1% right now, this might not fly, you know, this coming year. We may have to actually drop this down a bit. Okay. But for now, what I usually start with is 10% interest is what we charge. Okay. And some of you might think, what the hell are you guys doing? Like 10% is what you charge. But here's the thing. We are taking on that risk. We're the lender, right? We're not Wells Fargo or CIBC or whoever. We are taking on this risk. As smaller investors, we don't have millions of dollars to cover our losses, right? So if we're going to take on the risk of bringing them on as a buyer and a borrower, we're going to make it darn worth our while. And we're also taking a risk when the bank said no, the local credit union said no, right? So we're taking on the risk that other people won't even take on. So that's why we make it worth our while and charge 8 to 10%. Okay. Now, the loan term is something that you can decide as well. You may decide that 30 years, 360 months doesn't work. I do mine to 30 years. Okay. I know the term lengths and things are different in Canada than in the US. So you can set this up any way you want. But I like to do mine over a full 30-year loan term. Okay. And you can, if you want, set it up so there's a balloon payment if you want. I don't do this, but what a balloon is you can say you have 5 years, and in 5 years, that balance is due. And if you don't pay it in 5 years, then I can foreclose on you or whatever. Okay. You could set it up that way if you don't want to be in this for the long haul, or you can just let it ride. And I like to just set it up for a full 30 years. Okay. Or 360 months. Okay.
Hey, Cal.
Yeah.
You're still young, so 30 years you'll be around. So
Yep.
for some of us who are a little bit older, do we set it up as a corporation that is going to be around? Or I mean, because we're talking about owner financing. So
Right.
when I purchased the house, I purchased it under my name.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I transfer it into a corporation so that when I'm doing the seller financing, that
Right.
the person I'm selling to is now paying to a corporation and not me as an individual?
Well, I probably wouldn't necessarily buy in my name. You could if you're just getting started. I would probably buy it, like for you, since you're in the States, probably in an LLC. If you're Canadian, you'd want to set up a different entity. But I would talk to an asset protection attorney or a real estate attorney. But every loan document I've ever seen always has something to do with, I can't remember the exact wording that they use, but like basically it says that your heirs would like inherit this note, this mortgage. It would be passed on to your heirs or your spouse or whatever. I know I'm butchering the language, but there's like almost every contract I see has that paragraph that said that this would be transferable in the event of your death, right?
Okay.
So this could be a legacy that you're leaving to them. And I see there's a text and I know exactly who this is from. There's a message here. Just give me a second. I knew it was from you, Michael. It's yours to the benefit. And yours to the benefit. Okay. Heirs and assigns, Antonio. Yes. So we've got a law student in our midst as well as an accountant. So this is awesome because you guys can correct my ignorance and bad wording and all that stuff. So awesome to have both you guys here. So yes, it would go to your heirs basically to answer your question. Okay. And this is what I like my goal. I want to get as many of these owner finance notes, they call them notes, as I can, and just pass them on to my daughters. Right. So, and my wife, but I'd probably outlive her, even though she runs every day. All right. So there is an app. Just like everything else, there's an app for the loan calculator, okay? So if you go in the app store, some of them are kind of crappy, but this is a screenshot of one I found. And so all you do with these loan calculators is you just put in the variables that you have and it'll solve for the one you're missing, okay? So I think the next slide I'll actually show you, but there's the loan amount, the interest rate, the loan duration, either in months or years, and then the monthly payment. So it calculates it fully for you. And this would be an amortized loan. So this isn't like an interest only simple interest loan. This is like what you'd get on your mortgage for your house, okay? So in this case, we're going to use 10% in the interest column, 360 months for the duration. And we already decided based on the rent that 800 is their payment. Okay, so when you put those in and hit solve or enter, you're going to get a loan amount of $91,151. Okay, so let's just make it 90 just to make it easy. Okay, so just by starting from the rent amount, we've now come up with a loan, an owner finance loan amount. Okay, that we can sell this house for. But that's not the sale price, right? We still need to figure out the down payment and what the overall sale price is going to be. Okay. So before I move on, do you guys get this, how I got to this loan amount? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So determining the actual sale price now, we need to know how much down payment we're willing to accept. Okay. 20% is ideal if you can get it. But in my experience, it's harder to find people that have saved up enough money for 20% down than it is for people that can save up 10% down, okay? So it's up to you. You may decide that it's worth waiting out to find that 20% down payment buyer, but I usually just say 10% when I do my analysis, okay? And if I can find the 20%er, then I'll take it. But my goal is to find at least a 10% down buyer, okay? And if they don't have the money, then they're not my buyer. Okay, so if we need 10% down, right, that means that the loan amount, 100% minus 10% is 90%, right? So our loan of 90,000 is 90% of our sale price, okay? So the calculation there, I feel like I'm a math teacher from like high school algebra. You just basically take your loan amount and you divide it by 0.9, and that will solve for your sale price, okay? So in this case, 90,000 divided by 0.9 is 100,000, okay? So this fictional house that we've got, we can sell it for 100,000 owner financed, get 10% down, okay? Have a 90,000 owner finance mortgage on it with our buyer, who's our borrower. We can charge them 10% over 30 years, okay? And if we structure this loan this way, our buyer is going to be able to own a home in this neighborhood for the same price that it costs to rent in this neighborhood. So for them, this is awesome, right? For you though, it's only awesome if these numbers make sense, okay? And so this is where we need to figure out, well, how are we going to make our offer? How are we going to get a house so that these numbers actually are in our benefit? Okay. So you guys understand this and you're cool with how I got to this? Okay. So yeah, I guess I have a summary, but I already kind of said that out loud. So basically we can sell it for 100, collect 10% up front as a down payment. Okay. Then we're going to get our real estate attorney to draft a mortgage and so a promissory note and some kind of mortgage document. And it's going to say that we are the lender and that we have a mortgage with our buyer. And this is going to be registered on title of the property, securing our investment to the property, to this collateral. Okay. Just like your bank would if you get a mortgage. Okay. We're going to get that 10,000 up front in our pockets. Thank you very much when we close the sale. And then our buyer is going to be on the hook. When you actually run the numbers at 90,000, it actually, the monthly payment comes out to 789, but it's basically 800, right? So every month now, our buyer is going to have to send us a payment of 790 a month. Okay. They're going to pay 100 in property taxes a month, 100 in insurance a month, and they can own for the price of rent. Okay. So that's on the sale end of things, how this all works. Okay. If they don't make, I'm going to talk about this more, but if they don't make their payments, we can foreclose on them just like your bank can and take the property back or sell it at the auction. And I'll cover that a little bit later.
Would you mind showing the other slide real quick? Just the slide
Yep.
before.
Sure.
So the sale price is the owner finance value. That was that bottom line is what I was wanting to. Could you explain that wording?
Okay. Well, the reason I say that is we can sell this property at 100,000 because that's how it will work owner financed. But if the actual value of the home, like if you were to get an appraisal and it came in at 90,000 or 80,000, doesn't really matter because they're only coming to us. They're not shopping the other houses on the street. They're not trying to get a bank approval. So it doesn't really matter what the actual value of the home is, as long as we're kind of in ballpark. We don't really care, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go through real numbers now. I talk a lot. I thought that was going to go a lot faster, so hopefully you guys are okay with sticking around while I go through real numbers. So this is a property that I pulled. This is actually one that was up for tax sale, for tax foreclosure. This is like 2 years ago, but it's a perfect example. So it doesn't really matter what the house is, but this is one in Dickinson, Texas. It was up for foreclosure. That doesn't even matter. But the goal here now is, now that we know this, what is our offer? So let's pretend we're either bidding at an auction or we're talking to the seller and we're trying to make our best offer to buy this home. Okay, so we want to know what is our offer price so that we get a good deal out of this and we get a good investment. Okay, and so that's what this next section's about. So just a few numbers on this home. The tax assessed value was 118.5. The Zillow Zestimate value is 143. Doesn't really matter, but that's just kind of the range of value this home is. And it rented, the Zillow rent said it would rent for $14.50 a month. Okay. This Zillow number, the 1450 is the most important here. Okay. I just wanted to show you kind of the rough numbers. So again, we got to first figure out what we can sell it for. So I'm going to go a little bit faster as we go through this now, but we want to make the payment the same as rent, or we want to make sure we're kind of in that 10 to 15% of the value when we sell it. Okay, those are the two calculations or criteria we want to set this up as. Okay, so I told you $14.50 is the rent, and I did some searching, and the monthly taxes, this is what the tax assessor website said, works out to about $125 a month for this property. And insurance, it doesn't really matter for this example, let's just say 75, okay, was the monthly insurance, homeowner's insurance. So when you subtract those other costs that our buyer is going to have to pay to own this home, there's $1,250 left that they can pay me as their new lender to buy this home. Okay. So we're going to work off this 1250 to figure out our owner finance loan and sale price. So again, I got a little different app here, but same thing. We want to solve, we want to use 10% interest, 360-month loan, and we're going to use this payment amount of 1250, and we want to solve for the loan amount. Okay, so we're going to enter our variables into our calculator, into our app, and it's going to tell us what our loan is going to be on this home. Okay, and what I did when I did this calculation, the loan amount came out to 142.5. Okay. So because I went a little faster there, are you following me how I got to 142.5 as my loan amount? Everyone good? Okay. So at a loan of 142.5 with 10% interest over 30 years, the monthly payment comes out to 1250. Okay. So that's what I did there. Can I switch? Okay. So remember what I said last time, we also have to factor in our down payment though. And so if we want to collect 10% down payment from our buyer, then we take our loan amount of 142,500 and we divide it by 0.9. Okay. Say we wanted to get 20% down. Well, 100 minus 20 is 80. So we'd have to divide by 0.8. Okay. But 0.9 is if we want 10% down. So with 10% down payment, we can sell this house, or the owner finance value of this house is 158. Okay. Now, I just wanted to highlight here the Zillow estimated value, which isn't always accurate, but let's pretend that this was we were 100% sure that the as-is value of this home was 143.6, let's just say. Well, we can sell this for 158 all day long because payments are the same as rent. Okay, so we're able to get more value out of this home than we could if we were just going to sell it. Okay. All right. So now here's a summary. We can sell it for 158. Our buyer would pay us 15,800 as a down payment. The loan that we would carry with them, or our note, would be 142, and this is supposed to be a 5. I made a mistake, but and so their monthly payment would be 1248. So that's what we get from them every single month as our monthly cash. Well, it might not be cash flow, but every month we get 1248 from our buyer. Okay. And so they're able to pay and own this home for the same price as rent. Okay. And one thing I wanted to show you guys just real quick here is, it's going to let me. I use this all the time. I'm just going to share my other screen. Let's see. So I have this as a favorite or bookmarked website, mortgagecalculator.org. And I use this like every deal I analyze. It's the same thing, but you put in your home value, your down payment, your interest rate, your term, and then it also allows you to put the taxes and insurance and stuff. I always just make that 0. I don't care. And then you can even set a start date for your mortgage. But what I like about it is, oh man, now I got to remember. So it's 158 is the purchase price. We are getting 10% down. So there's our loan amount. Oh, it is 142.2. Our interest is 10%. We have a 30-year term. What I like about this website is it shows you the amortization tables. So if you click here, you can either see it monthly or annually. And so it'll tell you over time, if you want to know like how much the loan's been paid down in 10 years or 5 years, it shows you what the balance is going to be over a certain amount of time. Okay. And it also shows you how much you've made in interest and principal over that amount of time. And they have it monthly and yearly. Okay. So that's really handy when you're doing these analysis, is to be able to see this. So it's just mortgagecalculator.org. Okay. All right, moving on. So one note I just wanted to make, you can do this on any type of property. So you may be in a higher end area where rents and home values are really spread apart, okay? So if you tried to set up your payments so that they're the same as rent, your value is going to be like 50 grand less than the actual market value of the home, okay? So you don't want to be selling your home for 50 grand less than it's worth, right? So in these cases where this rent own for the same price as rent thing, if it doesn't work because it's a higher end neighborhood, then we just shoot for the 10 to 15% above property value. Okay. The only reason we use the own for the price of rent is it makes it a no-brainer for people, and it makes it really easy to find buyers. But higher end properties, we just want to have it close. We can mark it up a little bit above as is value, but that's about as best as we can do. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know, you can do it on anything. You can do it on like a $2 million home if you want. Okay. So we know what we can sell this beast for, but we need to make it a good deal, right? We want to make money. We wanted this to be our investment. So what do we buy this house for to make all these numbers work? What's our offer? So I'm going to show you now how we would do this if we were going to pay cash, because I know all you guys are sitting on like $1 million cash. I actually vetted all of you to make sure that you were all millionaires before I let you into the call. So you want to know, I guess, if you're paying cash, you just need to know what kind of rate of return are you wanting to get on your money? Okay. So only you can answer that question. It's going to be different for everybody. But let's just say that you wanted to get, if you're going to buy this house, you need at least an 18% cash on cash return on investment. Okay. And so to figure this out, we need to look at the cash on cash return calculation. And all this is a very standard calculation that a lot of landlords use when they're making offers on rental properties. Okay. Just want to see, there's a message here. Come on, pop up again. It disappears on me. Whoever typed that, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask? It's a lot easier for me. Oh, there's two. Okay, I got it open now. Oh, okay, Jerry. Yeah, I did record it, so I'll post the link in our Facebook group so you can watch the whole thing. All right. Okay, so cash on cash return is your annual income divided by the total amount you invested. Okay, so if it's rental property, it's your annual rent or your annual cash flow that you earn over the course of a year divided by the amount of cash you put into the deal. Okay, so if we want 18% return, we've got cash on cash figured out. It's 18%. Actually, the next slide will help with this. And we know that our buyer is going to be paying us $1,248 a month. That's their loan payment they're making, right? So if you times that by 12 months, then our annual income is $14,975. Okay. So we've got the cash on cash return, which is 18%. We've got our annual income. We just need to solve for the amount of dollars we're going to put into this house to get that return. Okay. So again, aren't you glad you guys went to school? A nice review. So 18% cash on cash, solving for X. We're going to take that annual amount divided by 0.18, and we're going to get 83,000 approximately is our total dollar investment that we can afford to put into this house. Okay, cash to get 18% return, cash on cash return. Okay, but we're going to have other expenses. We can't make that as our offer price because there's other costs, right? So we have to think about our legal and title fees, so our closing costs, right? So let's just assume that's going to be about $3,000. Marketing, we need to be able to market to find a buyer for this house. And so I don't like to use a realtor. You could. In that case, you'd have to put their commission in here. But if you're going to use Facebook ads or bandit signs around the home or Craigslist or whatever you're going to do, you're going to have a marketing budget to find your buyer. Okay. So I'm going to put 2,000 for marketing. And then let's just say this house, we're going to put 10,000 into just getting it livable again, clean it up, whatever we're going to do to the house. Okay. So we put our repairs amount in there. So when you subtract all those from our 83, because that's the total amount we can put in this house, our actual offer is going to be about 68,000. Okay. And I know if you're buying houses in Canada, you're thinking, yeah, good luck, right? Or California, Lorenzo. Yeah, right. This is going to be different for every market, but this house here these are the numbers. Okay. So we can offer the seller 68,000 to buy this home. Okay. And this is to get an 18% cash on cash return. Plus you could go higher because also remember, we're going to get 15,800 back from our down payment from our end buyer, right? So you could, if you wanted, offer another 15,000 on top of that, or you could just say, no, I'm going to take that down payment as profit. I'm not going to offer anymore. Okay. But that's how you would figure that out. Any questions on that? On how to make your offer price based on your cash on cash return? Okay. So that's what I would offer on this house. They may not accept it, but that would be my offer price. But there's actually one more profit center that we haven't talked about, which is really good, actually. We've talked about the down payment, and we can decide what we want, 10 or 20% down. Okay, we've talked about that. We've talked about the monthly cash flow, which is the payment from our buyer, the loan payment. And the cool thing about owner financing is that we're the bank, so we don't have to worry about repairs, vacancy, property management, any of the stuff that landlords need to consider. Okay, so for the most part, that $12.48 a month, it goes right into our pocket. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's talk about equity though. And this is a part I haven't talked to you much about, but this is another bonus for doing these deals. Okay, so just a refresher, we're going to sell this for about 158. Okay, and our loan amount's 142 when we start. All right, and this is a 30-year loan in this example. So what we need to do is figure out, we don't know when our buyer is going to pay us out. Okay, they may decide that they get their credit fixed up in the next 5 years, earn more income, whatever it is, and they can refinance and pay out our owner finance loan, okay, in 5 years. It may take them 10 years. Maybe they'll sell in 10 years. Or maybe they love the home so much and they're fine with making these payments and they're going to stay in for the entire 30 years and pay the thing right off, okay? We don't really have control of that. We can set it up so that we do, but in this case, who knows? We really don't know. So all we can do is estimate, okay? So what I like to do is figure out if our buyer paid us out in 5, 10, 20, and 30 years, just kind of get some markers there just to see where we're at, okay? And this is when I shared my screen a couple minutes ago to show you those amortization tables. This is where I got this number from, okay? So you look at the amortization chart and you go 5 years from the start date of your loan and it'll tell you what the balance of the financing is or the loan is, okay? So in this case, after 5 years, they would have paid down enough to have 138.4 left owing, okay? And what was the original amount? 142.2. Okay, so in 5 years, they'll have paid down to 138.4. Okay, in 10 years, they'll have paid down to 131. In 20, about 99, and then it's a 30-year loan, so in 30 years, they'll have paid down the whole thing. Okay. So that's the loan situation. If they were to suddenly pay it out, that's what we would be getting back. Okay, so in 5 years, they're going to send us, the banker or the title company is going to send us a wire for 138,000. Okay, but remember, we put in 83,000 into this deal, so we got to factor that in. Okay, so we take that, we subtract that amount out, our original investment, and so our equity, I call it equity. If they paid us out in 5 years, we're going to get 55,400 in profit just out of the equity. Okay, after we factor our initial investment out. Okay, that's just the equity in this deal, not the cash flow or the down payment. Okay, so you can see in 10 years, we're going to get a check for 48. In 20, we're going to get a check for 16. And in 30, there's no check because they've just paid off the loan over 30 years. Okay, does that make sense? Why it's decreasing? It's because they're paying the loan down, right, over time. All right, so let's put all of these three profit centers together to see how we're actually going to do on this deal. So let's think about cash flow. We've got 1248 coming in every single month. So in 5 years, that's 60 months just in cash flow from those loan payments, 74.8. In 10 years, we've made 149.7. 20 years, just under 300,000, and in 30 years, 450,000. Okay. So I know 30 years is a long time from now, but when you add up the fact that we got a down payment out of this, the total cash flow we earned every month, and then that chunk, that payoff when they buy us out, pay off the loan. When you add all this up, you can see how much we're going to make over different time frames, right? So in 5 years, we're going to make 146,000 on this deal, all in all. And in 30, we're going to make 465,000 on this deal. Okay. Now, you may want to calculate what your return on investment is when you factor in not just the cash flow, which we did earlier with the 18%, but we're also going to factor in the down payment, the equity, and the cash flow. So we're going to annualize this to figure out what our return on investment is each year. Okay. So if our buyer paid off our mortgage in 5 years, we've made a 35% return on investment, which is pretty darn awesome. And it gets a little lower over time. And the reason for this is because, as you probably know, when you first make payments on a mortgage, you're mostly paying interest, right? And the longer you pay down your mortgage, you're paying more and more of the principal balance and less interest, right? So that's why it kind of looks a little bit more disappointing after 30 years. It's only 18, but that's because this is all played out. So the 5 years is the best because we're mainly just making interest on this first 5 years. So that's the best time to be in this, right? But even if this went a full 30 years, I'd be pretty happy with an 18% return. Most people can't get 18% in their other investments, right? So an 18% is pretty awesome. And we're doing nothing really for this money once we set the deal up. So it's pretty good. So were you guys surprised at these kind of numbers? Like when you see this, are you surprised when you thought about doing a deal with owner financing? Is this more than you thought or about the same, or did you have any idea? It's pretty good. And we don't even own the house. So I know rentals are great and you're going to get your cash flow and you've got your appreciation and all that kind of thing. But this is pretty friggin' awesome.
So Cal, question for you.
Yeah.
Do you, like, knowing this strategy, I don't really see what would be the benefits of having rental properties. This sort of seems to alleviate the need for property managers and tenants, termites, and, you know, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
like I have a hole in my wall from our door handle in our front door. And I tried to call our mortgage company to see if they come fix it. And they said, screw you.
Yeah.
Right. The lender doesn't care. So yeah, I honestly, I mean, if you're in a market where you're going to get huge appreciation and you have a rental property, then you're going to be able to take, profit from all that appreciation, right? Whereas maybe this is less than that appreciation in your market. But if you're in a market where it appreciates slowly, then these numbers might make way more sense than owning it as a rental, right? And you don't get the hassle. Yeah.
And I guess if you view the if you view appreciation as more like gravy on top, and you're looking really at the cash flow,
yeah,
this just seems to be a better model if you're looking for more stability, right? Because you have the down payment built in, the cash flows kind of built in, the equity's built in. So
yeah, you're setting up your own equity or your own appreciation in a sense. Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is, like I said, we can sell it for a little bit more than market value to begin with. And if we buy it right, we can buy it at a discount too. So we're creating equity in this deal. The other cool thing, which I don't have a slide for, but there are companies out there called loan servicing companies. And there's some that work just with investors like that do these kind of deals. And so I have on one of my deals, they collect all the payments from my borrower. Okay. They send a monthly report to them and to us showing exactly the pay down, the interest, all the things you get on your bank statement from your mortgage company on your house. They do all of the accounting. If my buyer is late, they're going to keep track of how many days they're going to charge a late fee based on the mortgage document that we have with them. And if for whatever reason our buyer just stopped making payments, they would tell me and say, look, you should probably think about foreclosing. We've been monitoring this, yada, yada. So even that, we don't even have to do. We don't even have to do the bookkeeping because these companies will do it. And the cool thing is they charge like $35 a month and we charge our buyer that fee. So we don't even have that as our cost. So it's pretty good.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you set up the sale agreement to the lawyer, how do you set up the way if buyer is, let's say, delinquent for 60 days, can you go after him and just take over the house? Or how much time do you need to get rid of bad
Great question.
buyer or tenant, whatever?
Great question. And that you have to know what the rules are in your province or state. Okay. So one of the reasons I love doing deals in Texas is because if you're a lender, I might be a little bit off, but I think you can start foreclosure proceedings within 21 days of delinquency. Like you can get the ball rolling. Now, I used to work for a private lending company in Canada, and they occasionally had to foreclose, like they're like a hard money lender, and it took like a year to foreclose.
Yeah.
Okay. So that might be something you have to consider. If you're wanting to do this in Canada, are you okay with it taking a year to foreclose, right? And maybe some states have those kind of rules too, where it takes a lot longer. So I love this in Texas because if this doesn't work out, we can get them out within a couple months. But if you
do you know what the rules are for Ohio?
I don't know, but it wouldn't be hard to find out. Any real estate attorney should be able to tell you, or you could probably look it up. In fact, Michael Matthews probably already got the answer right now because he's my legal go-to guy, right, Michael? Just bugging you. Yeah, but it shouldn't be very hard to find the foreclosure laws in Ohio.
I don't know that specific answer, but I do know that there's no rent controls in Ohio, which would make it a very landlord-friendly place to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know, like maybe places like California where they have a lot more legislation might be more tricky, but really before you do one of these deals, you should know what the foreclosure rules are and what you have to do and what the timelines are. Okay. But that is your exit. If they don't pay, you could actually set this up in a different way where you put people in that might not pay and then foreclose on them. I'm not saying it's a good way to do it, but foreclose on them, then put someone else in, get a new down payment. And then if they don't pay, foreclose on them and get a new down payment and just keep doing that. I want people to succeed. I want to put people in. It's going to be a pain in the butt to do that. I want people to come in and stay, eventually refinance me out or sell the house and do well. But as a worst case scenario, if we had to foreclose, take the house back and start all over again, first of all, our interest clock's restarted, so we can set it up for another 30 years and we get a new down payment, right? So that's going to cover the foreclosure costs and things like that, which are only a couple thousand to begin with, at least in Texas. So that's not a bad problem if you do have to foreclose. Okay.
So is this the for sale by owner when the person's buying it, as the person is in the house, they are the owner? What is the difference between the rent to own process and the for sale by owner process? And how is it different with getting the person out that doesn't pay for 60 days?
Well, I haven't done any rent to own, so I'm not an expert, but basically a rent to own is your person that's living in the house. They don't have the deed yet. Okay. They're making monthly payments, and typically there's different ways to structure it, but part of their payment is towards rent and part of it is towards purchase. Okay. But they do not have the deed. In this scenario,
So you still have to deal with the toilets and all that other stuff. because
typically
they're renting.
you may have something set up in the contract, but yeah. But in this case, when we owner finance, they are the owner from day one. Like, we are giving them the deed, they're buying it from us, and now we have a mortgage or a note, right? And so this is the value that we have. We have this piece of paper and the security to that house. That's the value that we have. We do not own the home anymore, right? So we'd have to go the same route as a bank would to get them out.
So you still own the property, even though they have the deed, but technically, if they don't pay, then you can go after and reclaim the property.
Right. Like my own house here, I have the deed, but I mean, I have a mortgage on this home. And so my lender has a lot of control, right? If I don't pay, they're going to foreclose on me.
Like you said, the example of a car. When you buy a car, you quote unquote own the car,
Yep.
but the bank owns it until you pay it off.
Well, yeah, essentially. They
Well,
have
no,
a
you
pretty
you can't say that. Both
They
you
don't own
can't
it.
own it at the same time, right?
Right. That's what I mean
It's-
by deeds and mortgages. They're different.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a claim,
Right.
right,
Okay.
on that asset, which they will only exercise if you go into default.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
You own it.
Yeah.
Right. And the difference I see with rent to own and this is rent to own, while you're hoping they will actually buy it, it's at the end of the process. Here, it's right at the start.
Yeah.
So that the rent to own has already been triggered, and you avoid that uncertainty as to, gee, will they buy it? Won't they buy it? So I think that's an advantage, and
Mhm.
Okay.
you can have much the same in the rent to own in terms of who's going to handle what repairs and so on. But I like this; it takes away that uncertainty, which can
Yeah, I like this process a lot
That
better.
sounds good.
This is making a whole lot more sense than being a landlord,
Right.
and being, rental properties.
You've explained it very well, Kyle, because up to now, this has been somewhat confusing, and you've
Yeah,
made
it is a little, for sure.
made it a lot clearer after this. This has been extremely helpful. And it makes it very, very attractive, especially for us newbies, still trying to figure this all out.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. And one thing, the difference between a tenant and a owner is night and day. And I like to use the ski hill example because I live near mountains. When you rent a pair of skis, you're more inclined to take it over those rocky, rough patches with the rocks sticking up. But if you just bought that pair of skis and they're like brand new and you're all in love with them, you're going to be like, you're going to take those skis off and walk down that patch and then strap them back in, right? Well, it's the same thing with a rental property. And any of you that have owned rentals, your tenants typically don't take that good care of your property. But if
Right.
someone's been wanting to own their own home, they've got that pride. And not everyone. You may have a 13-year-old like we do that does not have pride in ownership. But in general, they're going to take better care of your collateral, right? And so much that I think I posted in Facebook about one of the deals we did where we owner financed our home, this property to, he was a contractor, and he remodeled almost everything in the home. Like, it's a different home now than it was a year ago. They bought it from us last Christmas. He's done everything to the house. So if we were to have to foreclose on them, we have a home that's probably, if we had to take that house back, it's got to be worth at least 50,000 more than when we had it, if not more, right? So that makes me feel pretty good that our collateral is actually more, like our loan to value and our collateral is worth more. So that's another cool thing. They may also destroy it, but if you're going to get a new down payment from your next buyer, you can probably repair it and then sell it again and come up, with the difference that you have to put in to clean it up again. So, all right, guys, I'm almost through. But do you guys want to know about like low money or no money down? Because I know all of you guys are
Yes.
millionaires.
Yes.
You may have some friends that have no money. So you could share this part with them. So what if you said, okay, I like this idea, but I don't have 83,000 to put into this house? Okay. Well, what if we brought in either a private lender who had some money, or a joint venture partner, one of the two, or what if we told the seller who owns this property to begin with and said, hey, what if you seller finance this to me? I'll pay you 6%. I'll pay you X amount down and I'll make payments to you. So then we've got we're now borrowing from the seller. We're going to turn around and owner finance it. So now they're making payments to us and we're making payments to the original homeowner. So you could do something like that. Or I don't have time to cover this and I want to do another webinar on subject 2. But if the seller had a mortgage, we could actually take over their mortgage payments and then turn around and owner finance the house. And so then we are getting paid by our buyer. We're turning around and paying on the seller's mortgage, and there's a spread, and that's our monthly cash flow. And this is one of my favorite strategies, and I promise we'll come back and revisit this. But for this time right now, I'm just going to talk about what if we brought in a private lender. Okay. So you've got your doctor, your dentist wants to do some real estate deals, and you've watched this webinar and you know how to do it now. So you're going to get their money and they're going to come on as a private lender. Okay. And you could get, whatever rate you can get, that is awesome. You might be able to get them to do this for 8% or something. But let's just say that you agreed with your private lender, your doctor, to pay them 12% interest only. Okay. So interest only means you just take that 83,000, right, that you're borrowing from your doctor, say, or your dad or whatever, times 12%, and then you just divide that by 12 months, okay? And that's where you're paying your private lender $830 a month to borrow their money, okay? So what if you did that? And 12% is really good return for a lot of people, right? That are used to getting like 5 or 2 or whatever they're getting, okay? So remember that our end buyer is paying us $1,248 a month because we are their lender, okay? So what if we turn around and out of that $1,248, we paid our private lender, our doctor or dad, $830? Well, that's still $418 a month cash flow. And a lot of landlords that I know, they're trying to get $100 or $200 a month cash flow. And some of the landlords I know in Calgary, they're paying like $100 a month out of their pockets to keep their rental properties. Okay. So we're making $418 a month cash flow, and we didn't put any money into the deal. Okay. Our private lender's happy. He's actually going, and this is why I covered the whole lien seniority thing. We would give him or her first lien position. So we would get a loan with our private lender. They draft all the same loan documents, right? All the terms. They would secure that to the property. They would record it with the county or the province or whatever. And they would have first lien position, meaning that they get paid first. Okay. So that makes them very, very happy. They've got priority. Okay. Then when we turn around and sell this house to our end buyer, our loan with them is going to take second position behind our private lender, meaning our private lender gets paid first before we do. But this, they call it a wrap mortgage. So our private loan with our end buyer wraps around the loan we have with our lender, okay? So this is easy to set up. If you have the right real estate attorney, they can set these up, no problem, okay? So you don't even have to know how to do it. Just talk to your attorney and they'll do it for you, okay? But let's look at the numbers now. So these are the same numbers I told you, 5, 10, 20, 30, but in this case, we are going to eventually pay off the amount where we borrowed from our lender, and we're also going to pay them 12% a month, okay? So even still with a lender, a private lender at 12%, we're going to earn 98,000 in 5 years, 118 in 10, 140 in 20, almost 180 in 30 years. Okay, no money down, infinite return on investment. Okay, so if you could get a couple of these on your belt every year, it wouldn't take too long to be financially free. to do whatever you want, play guitar all day or whatever you'd like to do, and have all your expenses covered, right? So you can see that you can leverage this using other people's money, give them a really great return on investment themselves, and you can do these kind of deals. You just have to know how to find them and set them up. Okay. So again, your lender wins. Now, they may be a little bit against doing a 30-year loan. A lot of people want their money sooner than that. But what you could do is say, okay, we're going to do a 5-year loan. And I'll tell you what that would look like, how to get out of that. Okay. Because it's probably, you could probably find someone that would do 5 years, right? For 12%, probably. Okay. So I kind of covered all this. One thing I didn't say is their loan to value, the owner finance value is what, 158 or something. We're borrowing 83. So they have a 53% loan to value. So they've got tons of equity behind them. So they're secure. They're not going to lose their money, right? If we have to foreclose and sell the property off, they are definitely going to get paid, right? So they're happy. And you can also get people that have self-directed IRA retirement fund. They can lend out of that. If you're in Canada and it's a Canadian deal, they can lend on their RRSP if it's self-directed. Okay, so they can take all that 12% and put it back in their retirement. Okay, so there's lots of ways to work this. And then they're getting reliable monthly cash flow every month from you, that 12%. And their money is working consistently every month for the next 5 years. There's no stoppages, right? They're going to get that check every month. Okay. And you just tell them, say, look, you know, if for whatever reason we don't pay you, Mr. Lender, you can take our spot and start collecting that check that we're getting from our buyer. Okay. You could just take our spot and it's yours, and you're going to now make $1,250 a month instead of whatever we're paying you. Or they just get the deed to the house and they can sell it or keep it or whatever they want. They can take over the property. So they've got a ton of security there. But the one challenge here is, what if they want out after 5 years? Your private lender, right? We have a loan for 30 with our end buyer. So a couple things could happen. After the first 5 years, maybe your lender's like, man, that was awesome. You like paid me every month. I want to keep going. Let's do another 5-year term. That would be the best case scenario. Okay. Or maybe our buyer decides to refinance anyways, or maybe they decide to move across the country and they sell the house and they pay us all off. Okay. That could be great. The average length of ownership of a home in the USA is 7 years. Okay. Across the nation. Okay. It's probably similar in Canada. Or what we could do is, if they want out in 5 years, you could just put in a different private lender and they could just take their spot. You pay them out, your original private lender out, put a new person in, and they could do a 5-year term at 12%. Okay. Other strategies, which we're not going to get into too much detail, but you can actually sell your mortgage, sell your note. There's investors that buy notes. Okay. They buy mortgages. And so you'd have to sell it at a discount, but you could probably sell your loan and then pay off your lender, and then you get some cash back. And even some small banks will lend against the loan, the note, the piece of paper that is your mortgage. They'll lend against it as collateral, so you could actually pay them out. Okay, so some of that's a little bit more complicated, but there are ways to get through that first 5-year term if your lender wanted out and keep going for the rest of the 30 years or whatever it is. Okay. Okay, last thing, we sort of talked about this, and yeah, we're pretty much done here. I'm sorry, this is getting pretty long, but so if our buyer starts paying, all we do is we go to our real estate attorney and we say, look, we're going to have to start foreclosing. You take the lead, do what you need to do, send the notices, you deal with this. Okay. In the States, it only costs like $2,000 to $3,000 to foreclose. Okay. And there's going to be one of two things that happens. If you want to try and sell this house off to the highest bidder, then you get them to announce as loud as they can at the auction, the public auction, you know, we got this great house, this is the sale, blah, 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 this is our price, who's bidding. Okay. We want to get the highest bid possible and just walk away from this thing. Okay. But what if you wanted to take this house back again and start all over with a new buyer? Well, then you tell your attorney, don't notify anybody that you're foreclosing on this house. And so what they'll do is they'll go to the courthouse and they'll say, okay, we've got this property, we're foreclosing, blah, blah, blah. and no one will hear it. And then, uh-oh, no one bids. So it's struck off to you, the lender, you get the house back, and then we just start the process all over again, okay? The other option is you could actually do what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure, where you just go to your buyer and say, look, man, you've been missing your payments. This is obviously not working. I want you to basically deed this property back to me. You go on your merry way. We'll forget this ever happened. And maybe you have to give them like $1,000 to make sure they don't trash the house when they leave, but they're gone. They deed the property back to you. You skip that whole foreclosure part and you're back in business, okay? All right, you can sell stuff that needs repairs. I don't even want to go here, to be honest. You may just have to mark the property, your sale price down, but you can sell stuff that needs work and your buyer can fix it up. Okay, so you can owner finance stuff that's in bad shape. You can owner finance any kind of property, okay? All right, let's just talk about the landlord thing. So we sort of hinted on this before, but the average appreciation since 1910 in America, and I don't know what Canada is, but it's 1.2% is what I read. I know different markets have way different appreciation, but you know, that's one of the reasons why people hold rentals is for that appreciation over time, okay? But they can be stressful to own a rental property. And any of you that have probably have dealt with some of those headaches, right? Tenants and toilets and late night calls and all that fun stuff, right? And even having a property manager, you having to babysit them sometimes if they're not that good, keeping your eye on them, okay? But the worst part is when you get your rental income, you got to make sure you put money aside for repairs and maintenance, vacancy. If your tenant leaves town, you got to clean up the house and get it rent ready again. You got your management fees, all those costs that come out of your rental income, right? And with, as I mentioned earlier, when you're a lender, you don't have those expenses. So you get to mainly just spend your income from the loan payments, okay? So this is just a comparison when you're a landlord versus owner financing, okay? And some of you landlords may disagree, but when you're a landlord, all the repairs and maintenance are your problem. When you owner finance, it's your buyer's problem, okay? Property taxes, as a landlord, I pay them. Same with insurance, maybe even liability insurance. You have to have all that on your rental property, and I pay it out of my rental income. Whereas your buyer is going to pay all those, okay? That's their problem. They have to pay the taxes and insurance. You as the lender just have to make sure they're doing it, okay? Move outs, of course, your tenants are going to move out and that's your problem because then you got a vacancy on your hands and you got to clean it up. Your buyer's not moving out, right? If they are, you're foreclosing on them, okay? The entry fee for a rental is you get the damage deposit, right? Maybe first and last month's rent. When we do a deal like this, we're getting 10 to 20% down on the sale price up front, right? So we get some cash immediately in our pocket, okay? And the mindset I already talked about, but the mindset of a tenant is anti-landlord or anti-investor. They trash the property, they don't really care. The mindset of an owner finance buyer is pro-investor, pro-property. They're going to take care of it more, okay? The appreciation is obviously one thing that you're going to get as a rental property, but we create our own appreciation when we own our finance if we do it correctly. And then the only benefit, well, there's others, but the depreciation thing with rental properties is one advantage that you don't get when you own or finance, okay? So we'll give that one to the landlording side. Now, landlording and rentals are amazing. I mean, tons of people do it and they do it for a reason, but this is just an alternate thing that maybe you want to look at that I really love. And I think we'll just leave it at there from now. I guess the last thing is just, you know, times like this with COVID and people in a lot of financial trouble, there's going to be a lot of people going into foreclosure. There's going to be lenders tightening up their requirements for new borrowers. So it's going to be harder for people to get bank mortgages, right? There's going to be people with low credit scores after this whole thing. And there's going to be a whole great pool of people that can buy our houses. And there's going to be a ton of people flocking to rentals. Okay, there's going to be a massive demand for rental properties, which is something else in favor of owning rentals. But we base our sale price on rent. So if there's high demand for rents, for rental properties, rents are going to start going up. And if we're using rental rates to set our sale price, then the owner finance value of our homes is going to go up, even if the actual value of the properties are going down somewhat. Okay, so this is why I say that even in a recession, this is a really great strategy and business model, because there's a high demand for your product, and you can sometimes sell your place for more than when the market's good. Okay, so questions. I know this is a long one, but thanks for hanging in there with me, you guys. Do you guys have any questions at all? All right. Tired out?
Cal, the subject to and owner financing sort of combo looks like a pretty substantial strategy for like a low money down.
Mhm.
Do you want to maybe like talk about, I guess, the subject to strategy versus getting a private lender? Because I mean, if you have a subject to and, you know, worst comes to worst, you have to give it back to the mortgage holder, right? Like, how does that affect your owner financing?
Well, I definitely want to do a webinar on subject to, but this is basically when you're taking over the seller's mortgage payments.
Yeah.
I mean,
But like, it might come a time like, you know, the market or whatever that you can no longer make those payments, right?
Mhm.
And I guess the exit strategy there would be just to give it back to the seller, right?
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, you could, or give it back to
I mean,
that bank, that underlying bank. But it shouldn't come to that. I
Yeah.
mean, if you can always rent it, like you could also rent it out, you can owner finance it. But I guess worst case scenario, if you were taking over the seller's mortgage to do this, and you got in trouble, I guess you just walk, because your name's not on the mortgage. It's the seller's
Yeah.
name. And typically they were in foreclosure beforehand. So they'd kind of be back there again, I guess. But I'd rather talk about subject to just in a whole topic on its own.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can look forward to one coming up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We'll do one on subject to, and we can kind of carry on from here, but we'll work that example and talk about that a little bit more, because you can subject to with rental properties. You don't have to owner finance them as well, or flip them. You can fix and flip a subject to. So we can
So
talk.
I wanted to ask you, you mainly do these on homes that have equity, isn't that correct?
Typically, I mean, you don't have to, like, if you're paying cash, obviously you have all equity, right? But if you're talking, are you talking about subject to or just owner
No,
finance?
I'm talking about the owner finance.
Well, you create the equity, right? So if you're using a private lender, right, you don't want to borrow so much money that there's no equity in the property. So say that house on its own is worth 100. You don't want to borrow from your private lender 100,000, because there's no security for them. Like if they had to foreclose on you, like maybe you got hit by a bus, there's no equity. So if they had to go to the foreclosure auction, there's no, and it doesn't go for absolute as is value, then they're going to lose money on their loan, right? So you always want to protect your lender and make sure that there's an equity cushion there for them, and maybe only borrow 70 or 80 or maybe even 60% of value. So if it's 100,000, you may only want to borrow maybe up to 80 on that property. Okay. So there's equity that you're creating when you do the deal. If you own it cash, then you have 100% equity, right? So, yeah.
I'm talking about the equity of the owner from when they had, but that's right.
You are the owner.
We are the owner. That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you are
All
the
right. All right. All right.
Yeah.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Mm-hmm. And as far as when your buyer buys the property, you're not so worried about what the loan to value is. I wouldn't be anyways, because you're getting paid in so many different ways, right? So it's not as big of a deal.
Sounds exciting as an option.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. Like, how would you like screen your home buyer, making sure like they're a good fit for it?
Good question. So obviously people are coming to you, they're going to have some problems, right? You're not going to get the perfect borrower, right? So I don't really care about credit score so much. You could ask them for it, but mainly you want to know their story. So first of all, why can't they qualify? Okay, what happened in the past? You want to figure out if they're like just habitually awful with money, then that's probably not a good person. But like if they have a decent story, then yeah, you can probably accept the fact that they've made some mistakes or had some bad things happen. But number one, you want to know, do you have down payment money? Because when you market your houses, you're going to get lots of people with no down payment, calling in or whatever they're doing, responding to your marketing with no down payment, and they're going to waste your time. So number one, do you have 10% down? Do you have 20% down? Whatever it is, okay? Number two is employment or income. We just want to make sure that they can afford to make those payments, right? So you want to get an employer letter showing that they're employed, their last few months bank statements or pay stubs. You want to get their annual tax return from the previous year or two. You just want to be able to confirm that they are actually generating income so that they can make these payments, okay? If they're self-employed, you can still get their tax returns. Maybe they have like contracts with some of their clients or something showing that they're going to have income coming in. But that's the main thing, is verifying their income and then making sure they have down payment.
So it's kind of like just like the same as a bank. You're just a little bit more lenient with their credit score and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I really don't care about credit score. I want to know that they're going to make the payment and that they have the down payment. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure. There is something called a residential mortgage loan originator, RMLO. And in at least most states, I think it is to your benefit to have, they're a third-party company and they'll actually screen your buyer for you. And it's part of what they call I think it's called the Dodd-Frank law that they put in. And the reason is because a lot of banks were wrecking it and like giving people mortgages when they couldn't afford them, putting them in a bad spot to begin with. And so there are some rules, at least in Texas, where if you do a certain number of these a year, I think over 4 a year, that you have to screen all your buyers through a RMLO. And this protects them and you. So they just look at the numbers of the loan and the income, and they just want to make sure that your buyer is actually buying something that they can afford so that they are not putting themselves in a bad spot, and it benefits you as well, right? So, because if they approve them, then you're probably pretty good. So you could always use that as well.
What was the RMLO? What did you explain?
I think it's Residential Mortgage Loan Originator, RMLO, and this is not a Canadian thing, but I know at least in Texas, and I think it might be all throughout the states, is if this is your business and you're doing more than 3 or 4 a year, then if you're not using an RMLO to screen your buyers, then you could get into some trouble. But if you're only doing like 1 a year, you shouldn't need to use them. You wouldn't be violating any rules or anything.
So are they a government organization or are they private?
They're private companies.
They're private companies. Okay.
Yeah. Like your title company should know some.
Okay.
Or your real estate attorney. Yeah. Good questions, guys.
Al, where do you, is there a certain strategy that you employ to find these properties? And also like between sort of Texas or any other states, have you had experience in other states? What's your
well, I guess it depends on what your buying strategy is. Like if you have cash, then I mean you could do this with deals on the MLS as long as you get your offer accepted, right? Or even private money. Like you could do this off of MLS deals if the numbers make sense. But typically you're wanting to market to motivated sellers, so sellers directly through like direct mail. I can actually think of about 30 ways that you can find motivated sellers through an advent calendar style method on our Facebook group. I don't know if you saw that, but there's going to be 31 ways of finding deals posted every day in our Facebook group.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So that's, yeah, I mean, sellers directly. is fine. If you're doing like trying to take over sellers' mortgage payments with the subject to model, then you're probably going to be marketing directly to pre-foreclosure people because they're very motivated to sell quickly and they don't have a lot of equity. So you can take over their mortgage payments, save their credit, that kind of thing. So we'll talk about that. As far as like, I only market in Texas, so I don't really do other states. So I don't know really what the second part of that question, what you were really getting at, but I only work in Texas.
Is there a reason why certain states might be better than others or provinces?
For this, it's probably the foreclosure rules would be the biggest thing. And also, I mean, not to pick
Canada,
on,
not very good.
what's that?
So Canada's probably not a very good contender.
You could, for sure. It's just you got to be prepared to, you know, not get any mortgage payments for up to a year because that's how long it can take, right? You may end up getting all that money at the end of it, but you're gonna, if you're relying on that cash flow, it might stop for a whole year while you get them out of the house. So, yeah. All right. Anything else? Cool. All right, guys. Well, I won't keep you. I know it's been a long one, but it was fun. I had a good time. I hope you guys learned something out of it and got some value. And if you have any questions that you think of as you're lying awake in bed trying to figure out this strategy, just post them in our Facebook group and I'd be happy to answer them. And anyone else want to contribute, feel free. I'd love to get more interaction in there. So feel free to post them in there. And we'll post this recording in there as well so you guys can watch it again. All right.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.
Thanks, Cal.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.